quickly, I'm going to run through some data points to set up our discussion today. As Laura said, I'm the head of retailing at Euromonitor International. We track consumers, countries, and industries. So I have a lot of resources at my disposal when talking about retail trends and beyond. Today we're going to focus on three major spaces. These are where our panelists specialize. So we'll talk about smart kitchens, smart bathrooms, and smart travel, particularly the cruise. In Euromonitor, we do track the amount of consumer appliances sold that have connectivity. So connectivity meaning it'll connect to the internet, it'll talk to consumers, it'll talk to other devices. And as we can see that over the past 5 years, kitchen appliances, there's a greater penetration of them being sold with this connectivity feature. And we'll talk about whether or not it's actually being used by consumers in a moment. But this will give you an idea of the landscape. And in particular, the leading device with connectivity is the fridge freezer. About 15% of new fridge freezers in 2019 were sold with connectivity capability. Now, we don't track smart bathrooms or connected devices within the bathroom, but we do an annual survey of consumers. This is US only, and we ask them, do you have a smart kitchen appliance, and do you have a smart personal grooming device? So I thought grooming device would give us an idea about the uptake for smart bathrooms in general. And you can see that smart kitchen appliances from the consumer survey is ahead of the game. About 20% already have a smart kitchen compared to 10% of consumers responding that they have a smart grooming device. What's a little bit disconcerting is that 60% of the respondents said that they do not have a smart grooming device and aren't interested in one. So we'll talk a little bit about the barriers perhaps facing the smart bathroom. And then finally, we also have a different survey type where we talk to executives in the different industries that we cover. This is one focused on our travel executives. And this is for the past 12 months, and the survey was done in April. These are the top 3 priorities for those executives within the commerce capabilities. And Ocean Medallion, which we'll get into, taps into each 3 of these, where they're improving the customer journey, integrating new technologies, and enhancing customer service. So with that, I'm going to sort of have the panelists introduce themselves as we kind of talk about different types of products. So as we saw earlier, the kitchen, Samsung Family Hub, is probably the most well-known connected fridge freezer. It was launched in 2016. And we have Michael here from The Spoon. If he could give himself a brief introduction and then talk about what he's seen with regards to the smart kitchen and what has resonated with customers.
Yeah, I think these refrigerators are interesting, but I've actually seen internet-connected refrigerators since like the late 90s at CES, believe it or not. You should go check YouTube. They've really been here for that long. I think what's different now is we're starting to see these things truly become more intelligent. They have machine vision in them. If you've been watching the news, Samsung and LG both introduced ones that are powered by AI, can start to recognize food. I think next we're going to start to see digital noses that detect gas. It tells you your food's going bad. But by and large, these are interesting, but they're not hugely adopted yet in terms of like consumers using them to go grocery shopping. I think because they cost in the thousands of dollars and consumers aren't quite convinced yet. But what we are seeing in the kitchen is a fairly large-scale conversion towards the digitization of food discovery and recipe discovery and our planning around meals. And I think what's happening now is we're seeing the infrastructure being put in place from a back-end perspective to convert that to shopping and commerce. And so I think the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts and the Krogers all see a massive opportunity, much like I think a lot of the entertainment companies, the movie studios saw an opportunity in the early 2000s as the digitization happened to the living room. And so we see a large-scale opportunity there, but I think we're in the early innings still.
Okay, great, thanks. Now let's move on to the bathroom. We have Thomas from CareOS. He can maybe talk about what the Poseidon Smart Mirror is.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So Poseidon is our second generation connected mirror. It's based on an operating system we have designed specifically for the bathroom requirement, which are quite challenging. privacy and security being at the top of the consumer concern. So Poseidon is a mirror that matches what our customers have asked. Our customers are hospitality providers, retailers, and homeowners. And each bathroom is different, so they wanted a different shape and forms of mirrors. So there will be no one-size-fits-all mirror, connected mirror, like there is no one-size-fits-all TV. So we build a modular mirror that is able to be integrated by a third party, such as architects or even mirror manufacturers. And we got a CS award for that.
Great. And you actually work with Chris, right? So maybe you could talk about the partnership there and how you're using the smart business for your business.
Absolutely. So I'm with Coty, and we have one of our largest brands is a brand called Wella Professionals. And historically, Wella was a brand where if you were a salon owner and wanted to open a salon, you would go to Wella to get everything from the chairs to the mirrors to the hair color, everything you needed to open a salon you could get from that brand. We don't do that anymore. So we were trying to find a way to reinvent that concept of a full service package, a full service offering to salons, but in today's world. And when we saw Poseidon, we saw an opportunity to provide salons an opportunity to have different types of software to manage their businesses, but also to have some flagship services like the mirror layered with augmented reality to allow for virtual consultations with top stylists in Paris or in Shanghai or in Los Angeles, which could be a great offering for people who own salons in smaller markets who don't necessarily get visited by those types of people on a regular basis.
So there was a panel earlier about sort of the virtual or the augmented reality. What type of features do your salon professionals use? Is it just hair color or hair care? Or if you could give a few more details.
For right now, it's really focused on hair color, just in terms of what the technology, and at least the technology that I've seen. So if someone has seen something else, I'm very happy to be introduced to it. But right now what we've seen so far is really just about virtual try-on, but we're working very hard with a couple of partners to do things like styling and other types of diagnosis based on damage to hair or environmental concerns as well.
Great, thank you. And then finally, we have the cruise part of it with the ocean medallion. Vince, explain how you made a cruise ship smart.
Excellent. Yes, my name is Vincent Ball. I'm with Accenture, part of Industry X.0, where we focus on digital transformations. And this was a project of quite a large scale. We designed and engineered and then deployed the largest IoT personalized guest experience called Ocean. And part of that platform was a wearable along with thousands of sensors installed on each ship. I'm not sure how many people understand the size of Carnival Corporation, but they have over 110 ships, and we're lighting each of those up. Now, some of the challenges with that, obviously, are scale, but the area of focus was really looking at where are those friction points that each guest would have along the customer journey. And in fact, we built out a warehouse with pipe and drape at the beginning to sort of mirror what that guest experience would look like and slowly evolve that experience over time, where we would remove those friction points through design and technology.
And I think, what are some of the major features if you have the wearable when you board the cruise?
So the foundation of the platform is really around location services, so locating people and things. And then we can build features on top of that that drive operational improvement, that drive unique experiences that you just could not offer customers. And it's really around, improving guest satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. I think I was reading that one of the features that ranked very highly with consumers is that once you're kind of near your door, it unlocks.
Yes. We worked very closely with Assa Abloy to build a frictionless guest access experience. So as I approach my cabin, I can be recognized and welcomed, and then I just walk right in. Very similar to modern day vehicles today, where you can just open the car door.
And there's a commerce element too, because you can use it to pay.
Yeah, so we have secure transactions in general. So whether that's a secure access to your room or secure payment for retail. A great feature that guests really enjoy is I can order a drink or food anywhere on the ship, and say my son asks me to go play basketball with him, I don't have to wait around for that drink or food order to show up where I am. It'll actually show up at the basketball court because it knows that's where I am.
Excellent, that's great. So now we'll just open it up to a broader conversation now that we know where everybody is from and what they're up to. In general, we're still in the early stages of the Internet of Things when it comes to adoption, both for businesses and consumers. And I know Laura has been tracking this space for quite some time. So why don't you kick us off and talk about how you've seen that space evolve?
Well, sure. I mean, I have been tracking it also since the late 90s, coming to CES and retailer coverage. But one thing that's really interesting is that we speak of all of these rooms individually and these activities individually, and we are now at an inflection point where people are looking at how to gather the data into a giant data dump, for lack of a better word, and then being able to pull patterns that cross all of these devices and activities and start to predict behavior and offer solutions to customers based on what they might want versus what they've already done. So a customer who has a smart mirror in their home might also have taken a cruise. And now this data stream will have points of data that will say what types of physical activities they liked on that cruise, what time of day they liked to eat breakfast, what time of day they had a cocktail or if they had a cocktail, and it will talk to their health devices and start to predict health behaviors or things that they might do to rectify it. And so it's just a very interesting time in the Internet of Things or in the intelligence of things, as Gary Shapiro said in the keynote the other day, where we're looking at data holistically and not just individually from a device.
Do you all agree with that? And do you have that kind of in your plans going forward? Please, Thomas.
I think it depends on the strategy of who you are to actually deal with this situation. Typically, all the major computer electronics companies who used to be exhibiting in the 90s, they are trying to build a platform for everything. The customer is not so keen to have one of those companies to own all his data. I used to be an executive at Google, and when we were working on the payment system, people were okay to give us all their browsing data, but not okay to give us their credit card information. So there is some kind of wisdom in the customer behavior that they don't want to put all their eggs in the same basket or not let anyone have full control about their life, and that drives directly to privacy. So to enter this market and to catalyze the transformation, at least a startup, we used to create, 6 years ago, we introduced the first connected toothbrush. Now it's all over the place. So you need to find a laser precise target that creates enough value for the consumer to have adoption. And this device will create an ecosystem around it step by step, same way Apple started with the iPod inside the phone, it's become the iPhone, and then there's an app. So we are still at this stage of finding 2 or 3 of the killer apps in each of the rooms that will justify the collection of data and justify for the customer to agree in full awareness, which is a new phenomenon, to share those data with someone that will bring enough service to justify this trade. And so this trade is becoming explicit because of the change of regulation. How this trade will be accepted or not is to be defined on a cultural level. So we will have different ways to agree on this in China, Europe, and the US, for instance.
And Michael, within the smart kitchen, right, very few people buy the same manufacturer for every device. Is that posing a problem, or has the industry sort of agreed to a standard to communicate the data both, to the manufacturers, but also the consumer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there's no Wi-Fi or kind of like kitchen-centric consortium that allows everything to intercommunicate. The fact of the matter is there are corporations with their own agendas, largely, oftentimes don't interoperate with other platforms, but there are some underlying technology platforms that allow you to do that. I mean, I think if you were to step back and look at where we are from a kitchen perspective, 20 years ago, we talked about in the internet world, like laying dark fiber. I think we're kind of in that era, like connected appliances are kind of laying the dark fiber for the services that will flourish over time. But it's complicated, right? Food, particularly fresh food, you have to have cold chain delivery. You have to have the food delivered in a certain amount of time. So I think we're getting there. You certainly see the big platform players working on things like hybrid delivery models, like delivering into your garage or into the back of your car, or actually through your home using a smart lock. So you could see them putting in the infrastructure to enable anticipatory delivery, like you talked about, where you have a subscription, you have your food on your table when you get home. But I think by and large, we're still kind of in the early stages of that, and the devices right now aren't necessarily always talking together.
Mm-hmm. And Vince, I mean, you have to convince people to download an app and use a wearable for a very specific part of their lives. Did you have any sort of barriers to that, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so the app is not required, but it does help facilitate the guest experience. We've got large touch screens that have the same type of content on them throughout the ship. We do have to have a wearable, but just like staying at a hotel or a resort, there's a key of some sort that people had to have. We thought that the aspect of having that would be a barrier, and turned out no one's really having any issue with that at all because of the value of that it has for each guest. I would like to touch base on your previous question, if I can.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Because I think part of the biggest challenge with the industry is really around integration. And across these different implementations or products, getting those integrated together is critical. And I think one of the biggest barriers to building out a full system. In addition to that, really we're finding silos within businesses not wanting to work together or have different budgets that prohibit them from pooling their money together to build a system that would actually be across those different functions. So those are two aspects that we're seeing in the industry. Smart city has this big problem, and if you think about a ship, it is a smart city. We've got retail, we've got hotel, restaurants, spa, everything, right? Entertainment. And so how do you stitch all of those experiences together? Leveraging technology is one of the big challenges.
And then even when you go into port, right, does the Ocean Medallion work in the port cities? Or
Yeah, it does. It works at the port, and we're doing more and more to bring that experience into the ports, into the cities with different retailers within the different locations that the ships go.
Great. Well, these are all interesting products, right? And we've heard a lot about privacy in this conference. And in particular, right, we're putting devices that are gathering lots of data in very intimate places. How do you, maybe we could go down the line and you can talk about your thoughts on data collection, data protection, and consumer perception around that.
I think you've got to have trust if you're capturing that data with the brand that's capturing it, of course. There has to be more value to you to give that data up than it is to hold on to that. And so I think it's really a balance of that. And for us, particularly with this project, we had this idea that, well, we're going to offer the crew card instead of the medallion for those people that are concerned about data being captured. We found that very, very few people are actually accepting that. And
was that clear that, if you don't want us to know where your location is, here's a crew card?
And you can turn that off. It is restricted to only your friends and family, and so you can tailor that, so that helps as well. But the data is captured, and the company does capture that, and not only do they capture it, they're using that data to make decisions about their business. In fact, we have live digital twin of that data running in Doral that's on land outside of Miami, of the ships that are lit up, so you can see what's the number one drink being ordered right now, how many people are in their cabins, and how long do they stay in their cabins versus enjoying the pool. So there's a lot of information that helps redesign the ship, future ships, but also redesign what kind of experiences do they offer people that they're wanting. So there's a lot of value in the data.
And Laura, what's been your perspective? I know you've attended a few sessions on privacy
Yeah, I mean, privacy is a very tricky topic right now, but I feel that it is definitely being pushed from the legislative level, right? Right now, the onus is on the consumer, right? Know your rights, know what you're doing. This doesn't really work out very well for the consumer who doesn't pay attention and just wants things to work and do what they want them to do. And not just for shopping. I mean, if it were true, we wouldn't have student loan debt and credit card rates, interest rates that are so high. People would be paying better attention. So I feel like this is a universal truth that's going to have to be solved for by the companies that are collecting the data and creating the devices. But we're starting to see little whispers of giving consumers the ability to trade their data for something. And understanding the value of the information that they're giving up. And there's nothing really official in this yet, but just small ways. Like, you know, when I took an Uber here the other day, I was given the opportunity to share my ride with somebody outside of this car who could then track where I was for my own personal safety. Now that is, some people might think, well, that's kind of private. I don't want people to know where I am, but I'm getting something back for giving that up, and I was asked to opt in. So little things like that, features that, you know, offer consumers value and they can select whether or not to do them. I think we're going to start seeing them a lot more embedded into a lot of these systems and get a lot more results and higher sales of them and opt-ins.
All right, Thomas, you're putting things in people's bathrooms.
So we had to reinvent a full operating system to put privacy at the heart of the system, because from a technical standpoint, the way most IT systems have been built, apart from payment system, privacy was not really the main concern. So we created CareOS because we looked at open source solution that gives a certain level of control. So we are lucky because we are coming from Europe, from France. France and Germany became the most extremists with regard to data collection and data handling. There are two basic rules. The number one is awareness, like a real precise awareness, and one of the key learning that Google had with the Google Glasses, etc., in the early days of data collection is you need to know when you're collecting data or not. Your memory is shorter than the machine, so you might give consent one day, but 2 years down the road, the computer will not have forgotten, but you do. And so awareness of when, and so the first thing we designed in the mirror is a manual way to cut the mic. It's actually a mechanical way. You want to feel that you're shutting it up. So that's the first thing. And the second level is control. If I'm aware, I want to be able to say, I give my consent, I can remove my consent, and the removal of the consent with regard to privacy is the one part that is super difficult because of the inability for machines to forget. So we have to use a secured way to prove that you have actually canceled my partners or my own data. Because obviously I can say I've forgotten your data. I was surprised to see an insurance company who collected data for the consumer, and then suddenly when they left, they felt that it might come back, so why would they forget their data, right? So they end up having 100 million data from 100 million Americans, because at some point in their life they were customers of them. So the full removal of the data is part of the control and awareness. And so what we have experienced so far is you have like a matrix where you have three kinds of data, at least in the bathroom. I won't be short. You have the infrastructure data, water, how much do you consume of water, lights, etc. Those data not only are you already sharing without knowing, because your building might manage this on a regular basis. And then you have your own entertainment data, either you or your family, because there are two circles, yours and your family. And for instance, some of the data that you collect, maybe your weight, you might not want to share with your partner. But maybe you want to track your kids, so you understand that the family trade of internal data is not as obvious as it can. It's highly cultural. In Asia, you have 3 generations. In Europe, and here you have mostly 2 living in the same bathroom. And then the last one, which is the one that is the most important, which provides the most benefits, are the health data, or the data upon which we can base an health diagnosis. And those ones are heavily regulated, can't leave the country. The only way to scale a global platform for this purpose is to actually keep them local. So we end up, it's funny to be at CS, to rebuild a 1980s PC which is like no internet, everything run locally using Edge AI, which is a latest technology, but artificial intelligence that runs locally using those kind of new technology called federated learning that allows AI to actually be run locally. So this is a kind of equation we are trying to solve right now. It's going very well because somehow the cost of health and the impact of the technique early on, the funny things are easily cavities, but early skin cancer, etc., provide so much benefit to the user and the population at risk that people are ready, when they have control, to start giving up for a better, for the greater good.
Mm. And Chris, how does it work when you're dealing with professionals who then work with consumers? So you have two end consumers, really.
Exactly. So, I mean, our positioning is very B2B at the moment. So we have a direct relationship with a very large number of salons and hairdressers, so they're already used to sharing a certain level of data with us. But historically, that's been done quite manually, done to a sales rep. So now we're in the process of digitalizing a lot of that data collection across most of our markets. And we have the benefit / opportunity of the majority of our business being in Europe. So we had to react quite quickly to GDPR to make sure that we were putting in place systems that were going to allow us to remain compliant, especially knowing that so many of those relationships are direct one-to-one between our company and the client. In terms of the end consumer, I won't repeat anything else that's really been said, but we are building out more relationships with the end consumers, especially on brands like OPI, which is a nail polish brand that is very much more consumer first. So, yeah.
Okay, and Michael, are people afraid of the information that's being gathered in the kitchen?
I think they will be. I mean, I think one of the most exciting trends right now in food that people are talking about is this idea of personalization, right? Walk into a menu, have your own personalized, walk into a restaurant, have your own personalized menu instead of a one-size-fits-all. But, and at CES, there's actually 2 or 3 startups talking about taking your DNA and creating custom meal choices or recipes based on your DNA. Like, what's more personal in terms of information than your DNA? So I think we're going to get towards maybe more data frameworks that protect that. I think we are moving towards a world where we'll possibly have like our own personal meal profile or food profile. So I go to the grocery store, I go to a restaurant, and they know what I like, what my flavor profile is. So, but I think we're going to have to put those protections in place, and I think big appliance makers and et cetera are thinking about that because they're fairly conservative by nature, and they know that if they screw up on this, they're going to really screw up.
I mean, how many people would give up their DNA for a custom-tailored weight loss program, right? That would be effective and exactly without reading the user agreement.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
How many people have joined up 23andMe or Ancestry.com? A lot of people, so.
Yep.
Yeah, they're at Walgreens. I just saw an end cap.
Target.
Target.
Yeah.
It wasn't Walgreens, but yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. That's the end of this panel. Let's give a big round of applause for everyone.